I know.
Says you're live.
Yeah. I think it's working, Ron.
Right, it's live.
And it's 8 o'clock. Very good, Ron. Thank you. So welcome to the Public Works Committee, September 3rd, 8 a.m. virtual meeting due to COVID-19 pandemic. First item on the agenda, Nicole, sorry, out of habit. Desiree, you want to do roll call real quick?
Yes, Councilmember Streetman,
Here.
Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Smith.
He's having audio trouble today.
Here.
Yeah, she's here. Okay. And Chair Powell.
Here, thank you,
Have a
Desiree.
quorum?
First item is call to order to acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Second item is approval of previous meetings minutes from August 6th. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion to approve.
Thank you. A
Second.
Thank you, Susan. Any changes or edits, comments from anybody? Nope. Everyone in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Citizens' comments. We have one. Ron, would you mind reading that into the record, please, sir?
Yes, so this comment is from Sherry Welsh of 1924th Avenue. I would love to get some help. I have not been successful after multiple attempts. I simply want a trash can without holes in the bottom. I'm willing to pay for it. No one will respond to my voicemails, emails, and pleas. How do I get a new trash can? Please see my correspondence with pictures sent to Director Pitts. The email did not have picture attachments in the form, so we'll continue reading. Hi, Donnie. I had spoken to you a few weeks ago. I also left a voicemail with no response. I recently purchased and moved into 1924th Avenue. I inherited this trash can, as you can see in the attached photos. It has holes in the bottom. Today, I found animals had gotten into and am extremely frustrated with no response from Public Works. Can you please help me? I want a new trash can, and as I left in my message and told you on the phone, I am willing to pay for it. That is the only way to, if that is the only way to get one. Please let me know how to make that happen. Thank you, Sherry Welsh. And then she includes her phone number and her address.
Very good. Thank you, Ron, for doing that. Next item are department reports. Donnie, you want to kick us off, sir?
Sure. So first, garbage report. We're back to normal for this time of the year. 270 tons. Yard debris, that's about average. Maybe a tad bit high, but that's right on what I expect. So during the sanitation during the month, the main thing I would point out is on the 25th, Charleston County directed Public Works to begin transporting all of our garbage to the Bees Ferry landfill. And I would say that would be the key. Vehicle maintenance, we spent about $7,500, which is on budget. We didn't spend a lot of money the month before. I have 80,000 plus remaining in this year's budget. And I will defer to Robert for his report now.
Okay. All right, so we'll start with drainage. We had a repair of a broken pipe on Charleston Boulevard. We currently have Edie's on the island. They're doing ditch reconstruction on 2nd Avenue ditch. They're also working on Wildwood and Sand Dollar. There was some obstructions in the drop inlets there. They're also doing, they're going through doing vegetation cleanup. And then I've also been on Hartnett Boulevard with SCDOT discussing what we can do on that road because it's constantly underwater. The problem that we're having there is that there's a very small right of way. There's no way to put in a swell ditch. DOT is really not inclined to putting in drain pipes. So we're kind of really trying to figure out what we can do on that road. As far as facilities go, we've just had, we're still working on getting the sheetrock repair for City Hall. We've been working with on Morgan Creek Grill to get that a little more secure, adding construction fencing and just making sure the building's secure while we're still in this transition phase. We've just had, we're having the locks fixed at City Hall. We've also done some window films on the windows there to try to reduce some of the heat in City Hall, because it seems like the air conditioning kind of tops out on the second floor and doesn't cool it as well. Front beach, we've just, usual trash and debris. We've had the irrigation repair in the municipal lot. And then right away, I've been working on the assessment for paid parking from 21st to, well, we did an assessment of 21st to 57th. Right now, working with a contractor, we just actually received numbers on what it is to fill in some of the problematic areas on Palm for paid parking. Let's see. Also, we've had the palm tree pruning that has gone on from Breach Inlet to 21st. I've met with the landscape architect for the public safety building to kind of keep that moving along. As soon as they finish the sign painting, we are going to have a meeting over there to see what we can do to just dress up the sides to keep that project moving. Also went with the landscape contractor, and we did a citywide irrigation inspection to make sure everything was working properly there. And then the usual meetings and monthly underground storage tank testing.
Thank you, Robert. Questions for Robert or Donnie?
I have one comment.
Yes, sir.
I did see some complaints on the rights of way mowing. Just let me explain that. That particular week there were some heavy rains. There was a lot of water, and I chose to not have the contractor come in.
Yeah.
Myself, Robert, and one of our employees, Charles, piecemealed that mowing effort. Although it was late, Tuesday would have been the correct day. It got done Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But and it was all wet, which made it clump up. It has since been remowed, and you can see the difference. But I just wanted to clarify as to why it looked like it looked and then why it happened. It was all wet.
Yeah. Thank you, Donnie. And, Rusty, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things. Well, one comment about the shoulder on Palm also. I mean, it's still underwater in parts of it. I mean, between 37th and 39th on the land side, you still wouldn't be able to mow some of that right there because there's still puddles of water.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I saw the comments as well, and I know you guys. I saw you out there doing the cutting at different times, and know you're doing the best you could given all the rain that we had. A couple of other questions I've got. I know we've got the situation where we're now having to go to Bees Ferry, and I know that's going to be impactful in a negative way to our budget since it's not a budgeted item. So there's no way we can get that reconsidered at this point, Desiree or Donnie?
Well, I've been keeping you all in the loop of the communications we've been sending to the county, and I had an opportunity to talk to the county administrator about a week ago, where I, again conveyed the impact that this change will have in our operations. Like I said, or in the email communication to council, this will potentially impact our overtime budget, fuel, maintenance. When we've historically been able to take our garbage, household garbage, to the transportation station at Carolina Waste, now the county has asked the city to take it directly to Bees Ferry landfill. And they didn't give us a whole lot of time. They gave us maybe about 4 days to make that change. They indicated that they are looking for cost savings around the county due to COVID and the revenue impacts that they're having. However, it was somewhat disappointing to see that they've only been asking the Isle of Palms to change our route. And they did indicate that they're looking at other costs and other projects that they may need to change or adjust in some way. But It seems like the city of Owl Palms has been the only one that's been asked so far to make that change. And, you know, so we've been trying to get some additional answers and more information about that. And they did indicate that the cost to them for the city to use the transfer station is approximately $115,000 a year. So, and Connie can, you know, verify, well, I'm sure it's true. We don't know, we'll know, I guess, in some time whether our added costs with making that change to the route will in any way, you know, get to that number. We don't think so, but we just don't know. But yes, I wanted to make you all aware. We've only tried for several days to try to get the county to reconsider that decision, but those efforts were not successful. And we're just going to be monitoring, obviously, the expenses for the public for those items throughout the year to, you know, to kind of assess the true impact of that change.
And Donnie, what's been real life experience these first few days of having to do that time wise and
So-
such?
So fortunately, it's the end of the season. So the impact is not going to be as great. We have been able to manage, but my concern is both financial. There will be a financial impact.
Yeah.
I do not think it will be what the administrator said. My major concern is next beach season and the lack of efficiencies that it will cause for this, the potential traffic, as you know, on 61 and Glen McConnell, creates an additional hour and a half at best. Just that little corridor right there. It's not the 10 miles. It's the amount of traffic and what you have to deal with. And so that's going to throw the 13 weeks of summer season into a tailspin for Public Works.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Rusty, do you have another question? Sorry.
Well, just one for Robert. Robert, in working with DOT in regards to Palm Boulevard and sort of the shoulder repair or whatever, have they indicated any kind of timeline on that to get back to you?
No, I spoke to Kevin Mitchell with DOT and actually emailed. There's a loose time frame. He was supposed to come back to me with an exact time frame. With DOT, it's, we get blocks of time from them. This is a different type of thing. So I'm really not 100% sure. He has not gotten back to me with the time frame yet.
Hey, Susan, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to point out that in addition to the extra expense that the county is putting on us with the garbage, we are also losing it looks like we're losing a tax money that usually is routed through them. Desiree, can you remind us how much money we had anticipated receiving from them that we're not getting?
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is sort of a double whammy to the city because earlier this summer, before we ratified the budget, we received a notification from the county saying that they were not budgeting any Charleston County A-tax pass-through that we have historically been getting from them, which is a portion of the accommodations tax, county accommodations tax that is generated on the Isle of Palms. I believe, and I'm sure Debbie's looking in her budget, but I believe that number was around 500,000. I think we were budgeting a little bit less, 25% less of that just because of our COVID-19 impact, but historically it has been around the 500,000, 600 maybe range. So that is a significant impact to the city that we were able to work through in our budget, but we don't know if they're going to, resume that next year or not. But yeah, you are correct, Councilmember Smith. This is the second hardship that the city has received from the county this year.
Thank you.
Rusty, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have any final thought or question? You good? And hey, Donnie, I don't know if this is for you or Robert. I know the palm pruning from Breach to 21st has happened and everything's picked up and cleaned up and it looks great. Donnie, remind me, we have the island cut up in thirds, I think, on the palm pruning. Is that right? And we do
Yes,
one every third year, I guess. Is that our plan?
that's right.
Okay. And is that just from, sorry, go ahead.
It goes Breach Inlet through 21st Avenue curve, and then 21st to 41st, and then 41st to 42nd to 57.
Gotcha. And is that just a cost, time, and expense? Just trying to
Yes.
manage the volume?
Yes. So the budget's $8,500. It's been that way for years, and originally it was chipped, but I have for the last 5 or 6 years taken the palm fronds away to keep us within that budget.
Gotcha.
It comes to
Okay.
about $17 per tree.
Interesting.
And now it's about $35 a tree.
Susan, go ahead.
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, and I apologize. Obviously, I'm on phone because I was having trouble with my
That's
video
fine.
connection. But one more question. I'm curious to know about beach trash. Is that something, I know you do a great job of giving us numbers on the household trash that Public Works is getting. Do we keep any by the month numbers on how much beach trash is being collected? I know that's, for those who are not familiar, you may be joining us, that is done by an independent contractor. But I'm curious to know if he keeps track or how that works
So
volume wise.
So the subcontractor picks the garbage up off the beach in white dumpsters. Those white dumpsters are then transported or serviced by Carolina Waste at a cost to that subcontractor into a commercial front loading operation. There's no weight there. So you can't measure or isolate those white dumpsters because he has a route that he's servicing all commercial dumpsters on the island. So there's no way to collect the tonnage from the beach.
Okay. It would be interesting to see the volume and how it's placed, but I guess understood that that's difficult.
Donnie and Robert, thank you guys as always for the progress and good reports. Appreciate your efforts for everything listed and not listed because I know there's a lot more than what's on your list. So thank you guys for that.
Good job, guys.
Yeah. Let's move on to old business. First item is update on phase 3 drainage project and small internal projects. Desiree, you got an update for us?
I do. So a quick update on the phase 3, the large project and the outfall improvements at 30th, 36th, and 41st. Thomas and Hutton continues to work on the design and the engineering and permitting for that project. Recent updates on that end is staff and Thomas and Hutton has had some meetings with the Waldoon team to discuss and determine a mutually agreeable design of the 30th Avenue outfall. As you all know, that's the one that goes through the golf course. So those have been going well. Related to the small internal projects, we received from Thomas and Hutton yesterday, we received the bid package for those 5 projects that are going to be conducted all around the island and some what we call pinch points. Areas that need their pipes enlarged or just small projects that we think will provide or yield in a really big impact for those communities. So we'll be reviewing that this week and hopefully having it out if not tomorrow, early next week, so that we can go through the request for bids process and have a recommendation before this committee next month, or it could potentially be, I don't think the schedule assumes granting the award in September. So I think we're going to be looking at an approval in October. We are also working on a grant application with Thomas & Hutton for the Rural Infrastructure Authority grant. Some of you may know that the city was successful about 2 to 3 years ago in getting the maximum grant amount of $500,000 for phase 2 drainage. So this project serves another end of the island, and that makes the city eligible. There are funds available. There are about, I believe, $25 million available for drainage and stormwater and water and sewer projects. The deadline for that is September 14th. And you all may recall that Thomas & Hutton's contract had a line item and a component for grant writing and pursuing grants. So they'll be working on that, and we'll be assisting, providing any information they may need so that we can submit a very robust and comprehensive grant application for that project before the deadline, which is in mid-September.
That would be a welcome surprise right there.
Yes.
Help offset some of these other challenges we have going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, Desiree. Thank you. In phase 3, again, just still plugging along with permits and just waiting on feedback, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next item B is discussion of outsourcing household garbage collection services. I know we've had this on the agenda for, I guess, 2 or 3 months now, and you've had the work that Donnie, Robert, Debbie, Desiree have done, the big spreadsheets, and Ron included that in your package again this month, but we had not really spent any time going over that. So I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to kill a gnat with a sledgehammer here, but I just want to have some conversation around really the assumptions more than anything and make sure we're all comfortable with that before we put this on the shelf from a analysis standpoint. You know, we may come out with, who knows, nothing, good work, and confirm what we're doing or whatever. So I just asked Debbie to join us today and walk through the assumptions that have gone into the spreadsheet. So Debbie, if you don't mind, just taking it from here.
So Ron, are you going to be able to put up the Okay, Ron, go to the there you go, right there. Okay, so what this schedule does is take just pages from the budget workbook. So you can see the FY21 budget is there in the middle white column. And then I've tried to calculate what I think the potential reduction in that budget would be based on some assumptions. So working with Donnie to reduce our staff so that we outsource garbage only would mean basically eliminating 5 CDL driver positions. So our, you know, where we are right now is we have 9 CDL drivers and Robert and Donnie. So that's 11 people in the department. And then once you identify the salary and wage savings, you kind of just extrapolate all the overtime and fringes. So the reduction of 5 people, and I used an average CDL driver salary because of course there's a range within the department. So reducing the staff by 5 CDL drivers saves about $362,000 in salaries and fringes. And then if we anticipate outsourcing garbage and yard debris and the miscellaneous pickups that our staff currently handle, Donnie thinks that would allow us to reduce CDL driver positions by 8. So if we reduce, if we outsource garbage, yard debris, and miscellaneous, we can go from a staff of 11 to a staff of 3, which would be 1 CDL driver, the assistant director, and the director. And you can see that savings is $580,000 on the salary and fringe line. And then as you go down the schedule, I've just made some assumptions about vehicle fuel and oil, the rolling stock could be reduced. Currently, we have 6 packers, 2 flatbeds, a Caterpillar loader, and 6 pickup trucks. Reducing or outsourcing garbage only would allow us to reduce that stock by 2 packers and 2 pickups. Outsourcing all services, garbage, yard debris, and miscellaneous means we could eliminate all of the packers, 1 of the flatbeds, and 3 of the pickup trucks. So I use those assumptions to drive the savings on vehicle fuel and oil, and vehicle maintenance. Telephone and cable, electric and gas, if you assume that we're going to maintain the building as is, then there's really no savings in my mind that would be significant on those lines. You get to water and sewer, you can save some because there's less people, less flushing of toilets, less water usage. Uniforms, I just took the budget divided by the current 9 people who use uniforms and multiplied by either, reduced it by either 5 or 8. Same kind of thing on cleaning and sanitary supplies and medical and lab. Insurance, again, those savings are driven by the reduction in people because that insurance expense includes liability that's based on payroll. Temporary labor, I took the budget of 200,000, divided it again by 9 because, you know, each CDL driver has temp people on the back of the truck and multiplied out, and that's how that savings occurred. So if we outsource garbage, yard debris, and miscellaneous, we reduce temp labor from 200 to less than 30,000, assuming that we would still occasionally need temp labor to help out with various projects on the island during a year, even if we didn't have garbage and yard debris pickup. Okay, next page, Ron. All, you know, the capital projects, municipal accommodations tax, hospitality tax, those kinds of expenses are generally drainage or contracts like landscaping, commercial dumpsters. Those things are not going to be impacted by whether or not we outsource, so there's no savings associated with that. Further down, I've tried to estimate the capital savings. I talked earlier about the reduction we could have in our rolling stock. And if you take the cost of those, and there's a little table at the bottom of that page, I think. Or
Yeah,
maybe
it
the
is.
top of the next
Yeah.
page.
Your note 1.
Right. So you can see there's the number of numbers of equipment in the fleet divided by the useful life, trying to get to an annual cost, and then backing out the annual cost of the equipment that we'd be able to dispose of if we were to outsource. And then I took that annual cost and added it in above so that you can see all in the what I'm calculating the potential savings from outsourcing garbage only would be $586,000, and the potential from outsourcing everything would be $1,042,000. And then on the next page, we compare that calculated savings, which is shown here in the yellow columns, with the cost of outsourcing based on estimates we've received. We're still working. Obviously, this is a very hard estimate for these contractors to figure out because we're so unique in our needs. And we have this history of backdoor service for various residents around the island. And you can see those broken out in note 2. Carolina Waste did give us a quote, which was $12 per unit per month. So that's how we get to $144 for an annual cost for a unit. And Republic gave us a quote for garbage outsourcing where they split up the cost between regular service and backdoor service, which seems pretty reasonable because it costs more to deliver that backdoor service. So if you take those two quotes that we have received compared to what we think we would save, the $586,000, then that indicates that we're better off keeping that operation in-house. The only number we have that would include all outsourcing everything, garbage, yard debris, and miscellaneous, is the Republic contract that exists with Sullivan's Island, which that's a pretty good measure. You know, that's what they're working under right now. I suspect they did an open bid procurement before they finalized this contract. And you can see that for Sullivan's Island, the all-in cost per unit annually is $202,000. So if we multiply that cost by our number of units, we would save, according to this analysis, approximately $153,000 all in from outsourcing.
Hey, Debbie, real quick question. I know in the top right corner too, we're showing total residential units on the island, 4,384. So I guess, you know, and some numbers of those are, you know, rentals, some numbers are full-time, some numbers are second, whatever. But I guess, so to get to, so like a Carolina Waste, for example, $12 per unit per month, whether they're picking something up, and I guess this is true of this industry maybe, whether they're picking something up or not, they're charging us for 4,384, or a contract would charge us for our total units. Is that right? Is that how it works? Okay.
And I guess until they open the can, they don't know if it's got garbage in it or not.
Yeah.
So they at least need to touch every can.
Yeah.
Every week.
And I just wanted to add, you know, last time we talked about this, we were trying to get more specific quotes from Carolina Waste, particularly on the other, you know, yard debris and miscellaneous, and then a little bit more clarity on the annual cost per unit, whether or not that also already included the cost for the backdoor service. I suspect that it does not. Just by looking at the numbers from Sullivan, there's definitely an added cost there. So, and you know, they are reluctant to share those numbers unless it's through a competitive bid process that they go through the, you know, the exercise. So they really don't want to put a number out there that sort of binds them into having to honor that in the future. But you know, we have a great relationship with Carolina Waste, and they seem to indicate some willingness in giving us some ballpark non-binding numbers. So we'll be able to plug those in. But just looking at the 144, assuming that, you know, the cost for yard debris and miscellaneous will be somewhat like Sullivan's, maybe even more, then, you know, we can make the, you know, do the math, and certainly would be potentially more than what the operation costs the city currently.
Yeah. And hey, Ron, can you go back to full screen if you don't mind? Thank you very much. And Debbie again, and Donnie, Robert, Desiree, I mean, this has been great work and eye-opening for me for a lot of reasons. Do we know, does Sullivan's, Donnie, have any of this backdoor service to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, Sullivan's is 100% single family residential.
Okay. You know, and I think, I know we've had some conversations about this backdoor service and kind of the next step with Seagrove, I think was your next target. And I know, well, maybe I don't know. Let me just ask this question this way. If we, you know, out of this exercise, if part of our attack was to start seriously whittling away at this backdoor service, because that's just time and expense for your team right now, would pay it in a different bucket, I know, from if we went to a dumpster service. I mean, is that a worthy endeavor, Donnie, to really start attacking this backdoor service and eliminating it from our life?
I'm on speaker. So for me, it's about efficiencies, and efficiencies only. As these houses get bigger on the avenues outside the gates, it creates issues with other routes. And so to eliminate and stay within no overtime for my guys, it's going to be additional cost to the city to put these commercial dumpsters into Seagrove. Not much. The problem with the thing is Seagrove then will have to pay that user fee that Debbie will have to divvy out. And that's, I've just tried to maintain because they pay taxes as well, as long as you can. But once we start going into overtime, especially next summer with the transport issue, it's going to be problematic. And so trying to look forward, that would be the first area I would eliminate. There are others, but if we want to head down that road, we can certainly eliminate actually all of the backdoor service and transfer costs. If they want to continue it, then you charge them for it. That's just that's not a decision for me. It's for you guys.
And Chair, if I may, I guess for the benefit of the new people or anybody that's watching, if Donnie can describe what the backdoor service is and what that means for your operation, I think that would be helpful. It was eye-opening.
Yeah. So throughout the island, outside the gates as well as inside the gates, there are garbage corrals located primarily outside the gates. It's on the right of way, but they are corrals. And so the operation has to go in there, whether it's got garbage in it or not. They got to go in there and they got to check it. That's your backyard service. Now inside the gates, there are certain corrals with 8 or 9 90-gallon cans. Some condominiums have 40-gallon cans with 14, 15 cans in each corral. You got to go into that enclosure, get those cans, pull those cans out, service them, and then replace them back in those enclosures. That's very time consuming and labor intensive.
So the people who don't have a corral, they take their garbage cans out to the side of the road. Those that have a corral don't do that. And it's up to our guys who pick up garbage to walk to the corral, check the garbage can, whether or not it has trash in it. And if it does, pull that corral out next to the road to empty it into the truck. So it takes significant more time.
Yeah, single family residential, the resident or a service pulls the can to the street, handle facing the street. The garbage truck sees those cans, sees the handle facing. They'll service the can and they'll return it with the handle facing the house now. So, and there's a reason behind that is because although we do have designated routes, my team is not complete until all routes are completed. So if someone finishes, they're going to help out. So if they see, they turn down a street and they see all the cans facing one way, they know it's been completed or not, and they don't have to service it. Get out and look at it. And that's the reason behind all that.
Excuse me.
Yeah, Susan,
I
go
have
ahead.
a quick question. When we talk about, I think it was 4,384 residential units, when you're talking about a condominium complex, does that include, are we counting each condominium as one unit?
That's the way the industry does it via the water bills.
Okay, so even though it is, they might be sharing a corral of garbage cans, they're each one unit.
Correct.
So it doesn't necessarily translate into 4,384 garbage cans.
No,
Correct.
4,300.
There's more garbage cans than that.
Yeah.
More, well, okay, and true, because some people have more garbage cans. in general, like even one residential unit house could have more than one garbage can, right?
That's correct.
And then another question was how much we just invested a lot of money in redoing the public works facility, and can you remind roughly how much of an investment that was in the facility?
Desiree, about 150,000.
Yeah, I would, that's a good educated estimate. I don't know the exact number at the top of my head, Susan, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I just think it's important to note that we did just invest in our infrastructure for this operation. And I couldn't quite hear that. Did you say 150,000?
Yes, ma'am.
That's rough numbers. Yeah.
Rough numbers, around 100,000, yes.
Okay. I mean, is there anything else that we would do with that property or that facility that we would need it for anything if we did go to switch over to largely an outsourcing operation?
I mean, even if the city outsources household garbage, yard debris, and miscellaneous, there will still be a need for a department to do, drainage would be the major focus, managing facilities and equipment. So there would be the need for equipment and materials that would be housed in that location. So there would still be the need for a location for that operation to be based on.
All right, thank you.
You would have to also, you've got your underground storage tanks on this property. So if you're looking at redeveloping this property, those underground storage tanks would then have to be relocated.
Yeah.
Okay. And we did just spend a fair amount of money on those, right?
Yeah, several hundred thousand to replace those underground storage tanks, and that happened last year in 2018.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Rusty, do you have a question? Sorry.
Maybe a question in here, but a couple of comments too. In regards to hurricane debris, I mean, none of this really includes pickup of debris from storms, right?
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah. And historically, I mean, I can tell you from having lived here 36, 37 years, our team does a great job in getting on that after we've had a storm, and we have them fairly frequently, as we all know. And, so that's still kind of an unknown there that we'd have to factor in. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like this entire quote thing, I mean, because everybody's keeping things close to the vest on potential bids or whatever, we really still don't know exactly how much this could end up costing us. This is just sort of a macro estimate, I guess you'd say. I mean, it's not something that we can really count on that this would be the true cost. At this point, we're just kind of running estimates based on what we think we know at this point.
Yeah, and Rusty, I would agree with that. To me, the Sullivan's Island contract, I mean, it's a real life contract with Sullivan's with Republic, and to Donnie or Desiree's point, I mean, it's $203. To me, that's probably the best, absent going through an RFP process, that's probably your best bogey of what this thing would cost us. And that's without the backdoor service. And you can see how Republic quoted that for us. So
yeah,
probably best case scenario, it'd be higher than that for us, I'm sure. So you're right. And I mean, I would love to keep pushing Carolina Waste just to see if they would fill out the form for us without not a binding bid, but just to give us some idea of what it would be given our relationship with them. So, but yes, Rusty, I think you're right. But again, I think the Sullivan's contract gives us a pretty good feel for where that number is going to come in.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah, go ahead, Rusty. Sorry.
No, I just said that's it for me, Chair.
Okay. I guess, Desiree, I don't know where your head is, but, I'd love to see Carolina give us some numbers just to have it for a bogey, kind of to Rusty's point. I feel like the Sullivan's contract is certainly pretty much on target with what we could expect from the low end. But I really would. I don't know if we need to have more conversation around this backdoor service. I mean, I know the ones in Wild Dunes and the few that are outside the gate too. I mean, I can only imagine how much time this takes Donnie's team to go through each of those corrals. Each of those corrals have probably 6 to 8 to 10 cans in them themselves. I mean, it is labor intensive and time consuming. You know, if we shifted that cost to Carolina Waste via the dumpster, you know, to me, that seems like a positive trade-off to start down this path, but I may be missing something. I don't know where your head is, or if it's a worthy exercise to start ticking these things off in pretty aggressive fashion.
I mean, I will say if we're looking for efficiencies and we're looking for cost savings, look at the numbers for outsourcing. It doesn't look like that is going to yield any true benefit to the city. And, you know, the community is very satisfied. You know, it doesn't look like it's not only economically feasible for the city to operate public works, but the community is incredibly satisfied with the work that our public works department does. And I think that speaks volumes. And that's, you know, something that we really should embrace and just accept and recognize. So, but I think through this exercise, what it has opened up my eyes to it is this backdoor service component that really truly adds a lot of time to the operation. It doesn't mean an extra cost to the resident that has this corral. There's really nothing in the code that would require the city to do this, to continue to do this. I think it has been done historically based on the history of the corrals being allowed and not allowed, and some of these were grandfathered in. But I think if there is an expectation of a group of folks to move their trash cans out to the side of the road for service, then, you know, I don't know why the same expectation can't be levied on, you know, the folks who do have corrals. So people may shoot the messenger, and, you know, people may hear this and go completely, you know, against it. But I don't know, that may be the reaction for the people who do have corrals and have enjoyed that service. But I think that we should look at that closer, because with this new change of us having to go to Beast Ferry and us being worried about the overtime and being worried about the added time that is going to, how that's going to impact the operation, then, you know, we should also go through the exercise of what are some of the things that are not essential, that the city could be, you know, looking at changing in some way. So, I mean, I don't know how hard we need to go at it. I think we should continue to pursue it, get feedback from the community, and really look into what the savings, you know, could look like, and what options are available, because it may be that some folks don't mind not having that service and just changing their habit and the way that, you know, they handle their garbage. And there are others that may want to pay an extra fee in order to have that convenience. Because it is, I do see it as a convenience, that it's not being, you know, that, you know, people are not paying for anything for it. They do pay taxes, but, you know, when you compare the service between a house with a corral and a house that doesn't have a corral, then there's definitely a difference there. So, yeah. And Donnie may, you know, I don't know, Donnie, do you have any thoughts on it? We've talked about it internally, and I guess there's a concern about the pushback from the community in some way. But again, if we're looking for efficiencies, we're looking at stuff that we can use to cut some costs, then I really think that's a worthy endeavor.
Well, for me, it's the management, because there is an additional cost to any commercial dumpster that goes in there. That user fee is not cheap. And for every commercial dumpster that goes into a new location, Debbie will have to bill. It's a cost pass through, but she'll bill them out. That's in addition to the taxes that they pay. So it's for all those condominiums that was on that sheet, there'll be an additional cost for each one of those units and or houses.
Desiree,
That's my concern is, I tried to keep it, the residents the same, as long as I can manage without any overtime. But I could see Seagrove 2 years ago was when I first mentioned it, and that's the one. It's very difficult to get in there. It's the way those corrals are designed, and two in particular historically have been, if you think having to pull the cans out, go into bin number 9 in the summer and you see 8 empty cans and all of the garbage on top of those cans. And I'll have to we'll clean it up once or twice, takes, an hour. And they just, these guests are just throwing the bags of garbage on top of the can without putting it in the can. Then I'll call the property manager. I'm not doing it anymore. You got to get them over here and get it cleaned up. They'll comply, and then we'll have to go back and get it. But that 2 of those corrals in Seagrove in particular are historically terrible with, and I've got photos of just loose garbage everywhere.
But Desiree, the change for a resident is only, I'm not putting it in a can in a corral, I'm putting it in a dumpster in a corral, right? So it's not a huge behavior change from a resident guest standpoint, right? So yeah, I mean, to me, the eye-opening part of this exercise has been Republic's quote. I mean, it's twice between regular or backdoor service. I mean, it's double. So Donnie, I hear you and I appreciate, where you're coming from, but right now the city's eating all that cost and nobody else is. And we're eating it, in the form of overtime or inefficiency or, taking longer to get, through your route. I'd love to hear from Susan or Rusty. I personally think we should eliminate backdoor service for all 681 of these things. And that can't happen overnight, obviously, but it's just, it's horribly inefficient and time consuming. And that's my opinion. Rusty, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Susan, if you were, I think I spoke over you.
Yeah, no, I guess the other option too is to charge extra, which if I'm understanding right, we're not doing for backdoor service. So, I think that might be worth exploring. But I think it's also worth pointing out, because we've recently discussed the fact that just the volume was putting us in a situation where we might need an extra trucks, if I'm not mistaken, correct? That we were looking at having these serviced just because of the volume issue. Am I right in remembering that?
You are correct. 415 we're pretty much at our limit. So we would either have to go to Beast Ferry, come back and finish a route, which that would be major overtime. That's the very reason why Seagrove would be the first to be eliminated.
Mm-hmm. So if we went and just contracted that out, would they handle the billing directly with the condominium complex?
No, that's billed to the city, Susan.
It would still be billed to the city.
Yeah.
It definitely seems like we need to rethink this to some degree, and maybe just figure out what the best situation is. But if it's contracting, at least the backdoor service, that helps us with volume as well, not just the intensity. The extra time to go to a different location to pick up the garbage.
Yeah. Susan, in my opinion, if we charge for the backdoor service, we're not going to be able to cover near the cost that it really cost us. And that does nothing for the efficiency. To me, it's about the efficiency, not what we could charge somebody for the backdoor service. It's just horribly inefficient. So Rusty, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple of comments here. Philip, you mentioned it, and I think Desiree did as well. I mean, I think just the entire exercise of going through this was a good thing, no matter what, because it's, we've had some eye openers as a result of this. And of course, the backdoor service is one, because quite honestly, I didn't fully understand it either until we got on this subject a month or so ago. And it just, very inefficient, and I think we should go down the road of looking what our options could be in regards to backdoor service and see if we could build in some efficiencies here. And I want to say this too. I mean, Donnie and Robert and the team, there's a big intangible here for me too. I mean, they just do, I think, a wonderful job on this island that you really can't even put a price on. I mean, they're there at your beck and call when you need them. They do their best and to keep our island as clean and beautiful and trash free as they can. So I'm going to do a commercial for them and say that I really, for one, appreciate everything they do. And again, I think with this analysis here, it gives us a starting point at least that we can go and attack some of these areas here. I don't mean attack in a negative way, but to look at it and see where we can build in some efficiencies so we can continue to provide that same great level of service. That's it. Thank you.
Can I make one clarification?
Sure.
I do want to clarify that the cost for the service is borne by the city. The cost for the user fee is borne by the individual entity.
Right. Thank you, Donnie. Yeah, Desiree, I'm really of mind that I think we really need to go after this backdoor service personally. The inefficiency is mind-boggling to me when you walk through some of these complexes and see, to Donnie's comment, Seagrove particularly, and some of these others are just as bad from getting a truck in and out and having to have the guys touch every can that sits in these corrals. My personal opinion is we ought to go pretty hard at that pretty aggressively, but I'll leave that to you. Debbie?
I was just going to ask Donnie, does Seagrove and some of these other kind of condominium complexes, do they have an HOA or some sort of entity that could receive the user fee bill as one?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's, and my opinion is that's what would happen is Seagrove HOA would receive what you bill them, and then Seagrove would then divvy out how they would want their owners to pay for it.
So I'm wondering if the city could be removed from that. If Seagrove could get the user fee bill, the HOA could get it directly. And then the city wouldn't have to worry about divvying anything up. We have to divvy up the compactor because it's multiple users for a single piece of equipment. But if it's only Seagrove using a dumpster, then the Seagrove HOA could get the bill directly from the county. I would be interested in doing that analysis. How much would it cost for the amount of garbage that Seagrove, your estimate for how much they produce? So what size dumpster would they need? How often would it have to be serviced? And see how much that cost is, and then how much their disposal fee would be.
So
we can do that.
So maybe I misspoke earlier. I was under the assumption that all of the dumpsters that are through Carolina Waste, that user fee comes to you. And maybe I was wrong that only the compactor comes to you.
Correct. So if you're Acme Cantina, you get your own solid waste.
So that's the way it would be. That's the way it would be, Debbie. So it would not go through the cost pass through the city.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. And Debbie, all
But
of the
city would have the additional cost of the dumpster service.
The correct.
That would be a real cost.
Of the service. So if we service it 3 times a week or 5 times a week or 6 days a week, that cost of those individual dumps would be borne by the city.
Right.
But
Because
that's
the city pays for all commercial dumpsters. We don't have to, but that's what we do.
That's a conversation for another day, Debbie.
Yeah.
And Debbie, I know all of these behind the gate absolutely have HOA and regimes that are oversighting. I don't know about the 100 outside, but so that would be an easy task. And to Donnie's point, you know, the HOA can pay it out of their funds, or they can tack it on to their annual assessment or monthly assessment to their residents and pay it out of there. So,
The other question I had, Donnie, was, is it true that, like, if I'm a resident of Seagrove and I'm going to take my garbage out, you just go to the corral and find an empty cart and put your garbage in it?
yep.
You should
You
be
don't-
doing that.
Okay.
Or on top of it in some cases, yeah.
So if I'm a resident, it makes no difference to me whether I'm putting it in a can, a rolly cart, or throwing it in a dumpster.
It's
Correct.
easier to put in a dumpster personally.
Correct. Philip is correct. It would be
Is there a
easier.
difference in aesthetics or smell or anything like that? I'm just trying to think how residents
the-
might
The
push back
Seagrove
on that change.
Corral, the corrals in Seagrove would have to be demolished and then a new location, centrally located for a commercial dumpster. And then I guess Seagrove HOA would have to come up with a plan as to how to individually take that garbage from each building. And each building has 3 or 4 units in it, how they would then transport it to that one central location.
Yeah, so there's extra steps involved, Debbie, is to me, when you boil it down, right now Seagrove has 4 or 5, Donnie, I guess, corrals. You might have 1 dumpster location, so there's gonna be, some people may have 10 extra steps to dump their trash in the future. I mean, seriously, to me, that's what it comes down to, quite honestly. I may not have a corral within 10 yards of my front door. I may have a centralized dumpster within 12 yards of my front door.
Yeah, I think there are 9 corrals in Seagrove.
Okay.
For
Gotcha.
each building has its own corral. So you would have to, you just have one location.
Yeah. So you may have a little more walk than what I'm portraying, but I mean, essentially that's really it. I think, Debbie.
Okay.
Okay. So Desiree, we'll leave that with you. Okay. Thank you. That's good conversation and great work on everybody's part to do that analysis. Very much appreciated. So thank you. Shifting gears on our last 2 items here under old business are related in some respect. Yep. Question? Nope. So Dominion, item C specifically, Dominion and a tree cutting agreement. Desiree and I met with a representative from Dominion last week, not sure what day, but and had some conversation around, how we move forward with the tree cutting agreement if we wanted one, this non-standard services fund, eligible projects. Desiree's included in your packet a couple of pieces from work done in 2016, I think it was, that Dominion had already put together a list of projects. So let's focus on the cutting agreement first. There was an example in your packet for Charleston, the agreement between Charleston and Dominion. And hopefully you've had at least a chance to look at that or peruse it at least at a high level. Not sure what your initial thoughts are around that. If you, our conversation with Dominion was, Dominion kind of has eminent domain. They can kind of do what they want, quite honestly, whether it's in an agreement or not. In this agreement, when I read through it, in my opinion, it feels like a lot of legal language that probably becomes non-enforceable somewhere along the way. And Desiree and my conversation with Dominion last week, I thought Desiree had a great idea to take a little bit different tact around, instead of a cutting agreement, maybe we have a memorandum of understanding and it becomes more of a strategy document of how we move forward with these folks. But, there's a lot of details to be worked out on that type of agreement, obviously, but I would much rather see us head down that path personally, an agreement that might have some teeth to it from a strategy, project, how to use these funds orientation, as opposed to a cutting agreement that when I read through it, feels like it's something that everybody spends a whole lot of time on, and it probably goes on a shelf, never to be dusted off again unless there's an issue. But that's just my opinion. So Rusty or Susan, I'd love to hear y'all's initial thoughts to the Charleston agreement sample.
Well, I looked through it and Philip, you're right. I mean, it is a lot of legalese language in here. The part that I go to is, I guess, Article 2, the tree protection requirements, that part there. And they talk about the grand oaks or the grand trees, I guess, and the importance of minimizing the cutting or pruning of those. And I think that's a key thing. I think that's one of the areas there that we obviously all had the largest complaints, whether it be Isle of Palm, Sullivan's Island, City of Charleston, whatever. I mean, when they gouge the oak trees and you have that big L shape in there, and it's it makes that tree look dramatically different. I mean, it changes the aesthetics of that tree for a couple of years anyway. And I mean, I think anything that we can do to what you're talking about with a memorandum of understanding or whatever, to see if we can get a better handle on being proactive on some of this pruning and, get out in front of this a little bit. I think we would have, less of a dire situation, when we have this once every 3-year cycle or whatever, where they go in and just really cut the trees, the big gouge in the trees in the top of those. So I'd like to see us at least pursue that and see what we can do to get on a more sound footing with them, and knowing that they have the right, to like you said, eminent domain almost, in regards to whether they cut a tree or not that's going to interfere with the line. And, and also, I think the underground electricity is the way to go to, as much as we can. So I think we ought to stay after that as well, and trying to find ways that we can move that underground as much as possible.
Yeah, and I want to talk projects in just a minute, and we will, Rusty. So Susan, any comments around the contract, just initial thoughts or reactions?
I agree with Rusty. I mean, the Grand Oaks are obviously the most painful to see after they've been trimmed up. And there's some that we really want to guarantee have protection. If there's a way within a memorandum of understanding to have some local oversight from our island to make sure, and really, I mean, could be to the benefit of Dominion as well, to have local representatives signing off on some of these, or, maybe, I'm not sure how you do it exactly, but just to make sure that we feel like we're represented in the process and some of these decisions about how these trees are being targeted. And then also too, we obviously will want to have some representation of how palm trees are being treated and addressed. That maybe this is a City of Charleston agreement that I think that we're looking at. Is that correct?
Yes.
We currently don't have anything like this with Dominion in terms of how they go after trees, to my knowledge. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, we don't
Okay.
have anything that looks like this tree cutting agreement. We have a franchise agreement, and it makes mention of the standards that Dominion Energy follows for tree cutting, which would be similar to the standards for tree cutting that are included in this document. So the standards don't change; they're just memorialized in an agreement. But I think what Phil, Phil was saying earlier, it doesn't, the contract really doesn't, it doesn't materialize. It doesn't change anything at the end of the day. And, they were very blunt with us and willing to work with the city in developing some sort of, MOU, a strategy document that allows the city to prepare for the next time rather than just, a couple months or a month before the tree cutting starts. But, also, those would be the same.
And clearly what came up in our discussion around the palm trees and palmetto trees was that, I mean, that's actually a whole different approach that you need to have, because those are growing fast and growing into power lines. They can't be trimmed really to remove the hazard. And so part of that, from what our discussion kind of showed, was that you have, in addition to the trees that they were wanting to remove immediately, another tier of trees that are clearly going to be growing into power lines, that we should be proactive in considering that, how we deal with that situation, and whether some of these trees could potentially be saved. I mean, that's a whole other discussion that we have to really should be digging into, as to, what is the value of a palmetto or a palm tree that is growing in? Is it worth saving and replanting, or just trying to figure out a way to mitigate the loss of the trees by finding, planting new trees? So all of those things hopefully maybe could be explored in a memorandum of understanding that would be unique to Isle of Palms and our own special considerations and types of trees that we have here that are at risk. And then maybe also including a proactive messaging campaign to the community to avoid planting trees that are going to become hazards with power lines, because clearly we have some residences that, for aesthetic purposes, created some of these problems. I mean, it looks beautiful until it starts to grow into a power line.
Yeah, and Susan,
But,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, that's my main thoughts along at least the tree agreement portion of it.
Yeah, and I think, Desiree, correct me if you think differently, but Columbia has one of these, Charleston has one of these, and my guess is if you laid them side by side, they would look pretty close to identical, because I think it's a boilerplate document on behalf of Dominion. And that's why I think Desiree's idea of this MOU, that, to your point, Susan, would be very specific to IOP needs and IOP strategy. I think would be better served personally to have something like that would attack, the tree cutting, the expectations, and then projects that we'll get into in just a minute. But I just think this is a better path for us to go, and would be more specific to us as an island than this boilerplate document that Dominion has. Desiree, do you have thoughts? Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to add that, one idea that we can explore for the next tree trimming cycle, which, historically they've indicated that it's every 5 years, but from our conversations with Dominion Energy, it seems that they're trying to get to a 2-year tree trimming cycle, so that the pruning doesn't look as dramatic as it did last year or earlier this year. But one thing that the city could do is to prepare and budget for to have an independent certified arborist that could look and supervise the tree cutting to ensure that that they are following their own standards, and it gives the community some sort of confidence, right? That it's not a Dominion Energy certified arborist, which sometimes people see with some suspicion. So if we could do that and we can plan for that, I think that would help the city in responding to the concerns of the community to say, we're going to have somebody that's going to oversee this project and ensure that it's done according to standards and requirements, and these trees are being protected. So that's certainly something that we can look into for the next cycle.
Yeah. Rusty?
Yeah, does Charleston have their own independent certified arborist?
I believe they do. I believe they do, or they contracted with one. I may be
on staff, Desiree. I think.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, Old Dominion says that they have a certified arborist that inspects every tree before they trim it as well, right? On the crew itself, I've seen them walking ahead of the crew, looking up at the tree. I'm assuming that's an arborist right there, but I'm not sure. But it seems like that would be a good path for us to go down to get some sort of in the independent appraisal of each tree. And even if it costs us a
Yeah.
little more, it may be worth it.
And, and
I-
oh, I'm sorry, Susan.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for, I mean, we just need to look out for our interests and cannot assume that the Dominion, which is a for-profit energy company, is always making the best decisions for our community in terms of the aesthetics of trees and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not saying that they are, clearly they have to take it into consideration, but maybe that they might not be inclined to the degree that we would like them to in ensuring the health of our trees, which are so valuable to us as a community. So I think that would be a good route for us to go down to explore having an independent arborist on behalf of the city, watching out for us.
Yeah, do not disagree. So let's move into this second piece, or item D on our agenda. This project, a non-standard service fund. I think it was the last page in your packet. This is the list of small projects that was developed. Again, I think it was in 2016. That Dominion put forth and said, if you don't want or can't tackle undergrounding items with the fund balance, because there's never enough there to do any undergrounding for the most part, here are a handful of projects that you might want to consider. And I know you guys are just seeing this for the first time. I just saw it for the first time last week. So I think we need, one of our takeaways with Dominion was IOP would take this list, see if there was anything else we needed to add to it, prioritize it. And then Dominion also has a task to come back with some high-level cost estimates on these projects, just to give us a feel for, if we have 600-ish thousand in our non-standard service fee program, of which half of that is an IOP commitment, are there other projects, is this even doable on anything, or any of these projects doable within that non-standard service fund balance? We don't know that at this point. So Dominions will do some high level estimate on these projects, but I don't know if you have an initial reaction to the list of projects. We can continue to think about that. It's hard to come up without, kind of roaming around the island and thinking through it and kind of seeing what's out there. But any initial reaction to these projects that Dominion had put forth 4 years ago?
Before we talk about the projects, I have a couple of questions about the funds, if I may.
Sure.
And first was, I noticed in the wording of it, it sounded as if that if Dominion contributes each year towards this fund automatically, but it sounds like after 5 years, if we don't use the money, that we potentially lose it. Was I understanding at least their money?
Yep, it rolls off every fifth year. Sorry, Desiree.
Now, the fifth year it rolls off, but then that means that another year comes in. So you always have a balance of 5 years.
But so it's kind of a use it or lose it though. So have we actually lost potential money because we haven't targeted it towards improvements?
Yeah, every fifth year something's rolling off, but to Desiree's point,
Okay.
Another one's coming right back on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe I hope we haven't been losing, opportunities by, I don't know that we've really targeted this money in recent years toward anything. But otherwise, I think it's worth noting that while we are contributing roughly, have a matching here. So Dominion may be contributing in 2019, 54,000. The Isle of Palms is matching has a required match of 54,000. We are actually, the city is actually pulling in 3% off of the revenue. Correct. So we are pulling in more revenue than we are required to match. If I'm not mistaken, to like $328,000 last year that we received for the city in franchise fees. Is that correct?
Yeah, our franchise fee is 5%. So that's coming in this whole non-standard service fee is a whole different bucket of money. That's a smaller percentage of our revenue that we produce as an island.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you look at the page 28, it shows how the franchise fee differs from the non-standard service fund. This is an old document. You can see it says SE&G, and the revenues for the franchise fee actually they're not 3%. That was increased a couple of years ago. Now it's 5%. So that's a separate bucket of money that we get every year, cost of doing business, and that is deposited into the city's general fund. Then the non-standard service fund, those monies are held by Dominion Energy. And there is an expectation that the city matches 50% of those funds in the event of a project being done. So that's where, you go through the balance. Technically, what we're getting from Dominion Energy is $322,000. They're just assuming the IOP will match that number to a fund balance of $637,000. But that match we would need to budget and budget for, and we can certainly use our franchise fee to for the match.
Yep.
So we would have to pull that back out of our general fund budget for the matching is what it sounds like. And I think that there's some logic here if we want to get more aggressive in pursuing some of these projects in us using more of the money that we're getting from the franchise fee to put towards those projects. It seems like I think that may have been discussed in the past as well by other council members, but not put into practice. But it seems logical.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a path that you would say if we decided that we wanted to earmark some of this franchise fee for projects. I mean, we could certainly do that. But I mean, our budget's like a balloon. If you are going to poke it on this side, something's coming out on the other side. So, I mean, just because it's going into general fund, I mean, we don't have it earmarked in our general fund that says, so much from Dominion, and we need to me, it's just a broader strategy conversation about small projects, big projects, undergrounding, what do we want to do? And that's why I've asked Desiree, I want to keep some form of a Dominion topic on our agenda ongoing, just so we're keeping it in front of us, whether it is finalizing the MOU, finishing up, some work on these small projects, talking about undergrounding, kind of strategically going about, what's next with them, as opposed to, every 3 or 4 years having this conversation. If we can just keep it in front of us and put some strategy around it in the MOU, I think we would be better served as an island, Susan, personally.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And it seems like if we are looking at some of this money disappearing from Dominion as the 5-year cycle goes along, that maybe we should get on top of it and go ahead and, tackle some of these smaller projects on the list that, to make sure that we're not losing some of that potential funding. I mean, we've got big and small that we should be doing, but yeah, I think we should be moving forward and making some of these things happen.
Yeah. And just to give you a feel, the Dominion rep said there was a recent project on Sullivan's about undergrounding. I can't remember which section, doesn't really matter, but it does matter because it does affect the cost depending on what else is around it and where you put equipment. 1/10 of a mile to underground was $350,000 on this particular stretch on Sullivan. So it's a big number. I mean, I think, Desiree, if I remember right, the 2016 estimates that came from Dominion to underground breach to 15th was $6 million.
12 million.
12 million, yeah, and then to do another part of Palm was another 6 or, I mean, these are really big numbers, and to me, that's why, I just think we have to put some strategy around it, whether it's the small projects, and I don't bet, when I say small, I don't bet any of these are very small from a cost standpoint that they've put out there for us.
Mhm.
I just think we need some strategy around it as opposed to, we need to underground the island. That's not feasible, and it doesn't make sense in every location necessarily. But without some conversations with Dominion and residents and, it's right of way, it's equipment. I mean, there's a lot of education that needs to go on for council and residents, in my opinion, on this topic. So, I just think, I think with this MOU, I think it's just a better way to go about it, and we can put some strategy behind it, and will force us to think through where we want to underground, where we don't, what small projects we want to work on, what we don't, new projects add to this list. I just think it'll force us to have some pretty good strategy conversations as a committee and a council. Desiree?
Yes, Philip and I were talking about this during our meeting with Dominion Energy, and my suggestion really is, we'll move forward working with the MOU on the tree trimming and planting cycle. And then we've also asked Dominion Energy to provide very high-level cost estimates on these smaller projects so that we have a better idea of what we're looking at in terms of cost. And also, I think it would be beneficial to have a broader conversation in more detail about undergrounding, because like Chair Pounce was talking about, there's a law that has to go along with it, whether it's easements for the installation of the equipment, the cost of converting the actual property to the underground utility. So there's just a whole lot that needs to go with it. And I don't think that people are fully aware of all the pieces that need to be together in order for undergrounding utility lines to be even feasible. So, whether it's next month or in a couple months, I think before we get into the conversation about undergrounding, if we can have an expert come in to the committee and really speak to what that takes, I think it would help sort of, have everybody in a level playing field or when it comes to understanding what that would mean before we get too deep into it.
Yeah, I would agree, Desiree. I think you're right. Final comments?
That was a punch. Did you hear it before we get too deep into it?
Do we have any idea of this list of small eligible projects to be considered? Do we have any estimates on any of these items as to how much those would cost?
That's a to-do for Dominion. They have to come back to us.
To your point earlier, I mean, that 1/10 of a mile, I guess, over on Sullivan's Island, it was what, $300,000 or so? I mean,
Yes.
basically that's about a block, right? 1/10 of a mile.
At best.
So you're not looking at a very large area there. So, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we ought to keep this out front and center, and I think it would be really good for us to not only have an expert speak to us about the implications and about undergrounding and where it would be necessary and where we might be able to do something different, but all along in this too, we need to make sure it's a very open process that our residents get a chance to see and get educated on as well, because it is easy to say, hey, let's just go underground. But we know the price tag on that is so expensive and so much involved in it that we just can't do it all at once. So I'm all in favor of us moving forward and getting more information on this and make an educated effort here, I guess, to bring everybody up to speed on this island. Just a stakeholder.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add in, I think this is a great first step, and agree that it would be good to have a representative join us to start to educate us on some of these things at the next meeting, and obviously a long range projects. But I'm wondering, and I think I know the answer, if there is any leeway for us to, have an agreement with Dominion where we don't lose the money after 5 years of, the potential that they can put in for funding for some of these projects. I'm going to guess that that's their standard procedure of how they approach this, but given how much money big projects cost, it would be nice to be able to bank some of that without having to, worry about it disappearing.
Yeah. I'm going to say good luck with that one, Susan. It is very much their SOP is how they work. And I, part of me gets it, because otherwise you would be holding some pretty good sized balances on their balance sheet that are restricted, so to speak. And that's
True.
I mean, their franchise agreement is very clear on how this works, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I hear you.
figured. Thought maybe.
So I think,
It might be
Desiree, I
worth
think we,
looking at.
I don't know if Dominion could have us high level cost estimates by next meeting, but again, I want this as a standing agenda item more broadly, just Dominion strategy or however we want to phrase it. But I think, by next meeting, if you guys, Rusty and Susan, could spend a little more time on the small project list, just again, when you're kind of riding around the island, it's easier to look at it when it says from 41st to here or 10th to here. It's just easier to see what they're talking about. And if you see other projects that we may need to add to this list, I think next month may be a little bit too quick to bring Dominion in to start us talking about the undergrounding. But I think if it's not next month, I think it may be the next month, just an initial, here's what it means. I'm going to need some of your property, and I'm going to need to put a big box here and a big box there, just whatever all the ramifications of undergrounding are, just to start that knowledge process for all of us. I think that would be helpful. So maybe we can attempt to get high level estimates. They actually owed that to the city back in 2016, but I don't believe it was ever delivered. So maybe we can get them to just give us a ballpark, because I think, I'm guessing we will all be very shocked at what these small projects are going to cost us. But good conversation. Thank you for that. I'm glad so Desiree, I think we push forward with this MOU idea that would be very IOP specific. And I think we'll be better served for it personally. And we'll update council at the next meeting around where we're headed. No new business today. Miscellaneous business. Our next meeting is not Thursday, September 3rd. That's today.
Yeah.
Next meeting would be October something.
So if we follow the same schedule as being the first Thursday of every month, then we're
It'd be
looking at
October 1st.
October 1st, yeah.
October 1st at 8 o'clock is our next meeting. Shred Day is 9 to 12, Saturday, September 26th. And I've seen that out on the website. So that's out there. That's good. Any final comments, thoughts, observations? Motion to adjourn.
I moved it, we adjourn.
The second, all in favor. Thank you all. Very good. Good meeting. Thanks for the input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good